The effect or phenomena of receiving open general criticism is something that happens anytime you become even moderately successful at something or are at all present in the public eye, which is basically anybody who has a YouTube channel and posts regularly. And so I think that's the topic that I want to cover today. I think it's become more relevant, especially in the circles that I am around and see and frequent in the last few weeks, and so I'm going to address it even though I have mentioned it before in previous videos at one point or another. Before I get into that topic, I do want to talk quickly about this workout. I've been working pretty heavily the last few weeks doing my intense block of training, and my volume's been pretty low. This last week especially has had some really heavy numbers in it, and I wasn't sure how this session was going to go as a result of that. I did find it fortunate that I surprised myself a little bit, and I hit a 585 double pause squat here as a top set. That is a PR. The pauses weren't as long as I think I would have liked them to be because I was trying to count in my head, and it speeds up when you're underneath the weight at the bottom. So that's just how it goes. But I'm still happy with the PR. It could be a little better, but I'm not going to be picky, especially considering the other conditions that are involved. Afterwards, I had my day 3 of the Smolov benching for the second week, 315 for 7 sets of 5. I think my first set was my worst looking and worst feeling, and they started to get better until I got tired towards the end. So you guys are going to watch all 7 sets of that while I talk about the topic. So in the last few weeks, I think there's been a lot of movement as far as the topic of criticism in the powerlifting world. A lot of that, especially in the YouTube community, comes from the channel Infinite Elgin Intensity. If you guys aren't familiar, a lawyer named Elgin Mones does this series that he calls Exercises in Futility, and basically his channel is he takes clips from YouTube that he sees some issues with, and he uses satirical humor and logical responses to kind of break them down, roast them a little bit, but he tries to point out the things that he believes are wrong in the community. And as far as that goes, I respect the effort. I think it's important that those of us who are being seen as the leaders in the community are held to a high standard and held accountable for our actions and the things we say and the information that we're disseminating to people. That does lead to some Russell Jimmies when it comes to people who are receiving that criticism. A lot of them take it really personally, whether or not that is that they're not understanding the humor or that they just really do take the criticism as overly harsh. That's their prerogative, however they interpret that. I will personally say that something that spoke out to me in one of his most recent videos, he likes to read his hate mail, and at the end of the video he mentioned something about dealing with criticism, and I liked it, and I think there was more that could have been said about the process. He said there are 2 ways to deal with criticism. One, you can do what McDonald's does and just ignore it. If you don't like what was said, you can just pretend like it never happened, like how McDonald's says if their food is terrible or filled with worms or whatever, they just ignore it and move on. The other way is to address it point by point with evidence logically, and I think that's the more effective way. I think a third option is to consider whatever criticism was given, process it yourself, and decide if it is something that you can work on. A lot of the time, you will get random negativity for no reason that's just illogical and unfounded, and it's easily disputable. You say, okay, well, you are missing this piece of information, and I'm going to refute it by expressing my logical response back to you. But what happens instead is people will have logical evidence they could present, but instead rely on falling back to personal attacks and basically just trying to bully the other person into feeling bad for even giving that criticism. Personally, I receive criticism fairly often. Most of the time, my channel and my audience is very supportive and very polite and respectful with the way they offer that criticism, and I always appreciate someone who offers respectful criticism. Whether or not I agree with it or will utilize it is dependent on how I process it with my own understanding and reasoning, but I think that the way it's given is important. If you receive respectful criticism, it's going to be more it's likely going to elicit more of a chance to change the person's mind. But if you burn somebody, no one who's ever been at the wrong end of a burn scenario has ever decided, you know what, maybe they're right. They get defensive. It's human nature to be defensive when someone insults you. And I think that we could all use a little bit of personal growth when it comes to taking in that opinion or that information, determining whether or not it actually is something that we could consider. I know personally, if someone questions my squat depth or the performance of a lift, my initial reaction is to say, well, I know what I'm doing. But what I end up doing is look at it and see if there's a way that I can improve it. If my squat depth is continuously bad and multiple people are commenting on it and pointing it out to me, it may benefit me in a meet to address that issue. Even if I don't publicly acknowledge it and say, well, this is the reason that I'm working on it, it is something that you consider, and it is something that you can grow from. I think a lot of people would be better off if they took criticism as an opportunity to process their own understanding. A lot of the time, if you are really offended by something that someone says, it's because you believe it about yourself, and it's something that you have a personal bias to, or they hit you in that sore spot where you already feel that way, and that's why it stings. If someone tells you something that you really don't believe, a lot of the time it's easier to just completely ignore that criticism. And I think that's one of the issues that has come up with the idea of haters are going to hate and just ignore it. I think if you can defute it with logical responses, that is a better alternative, because then you can educate someone who is possibly just underinformed. But that's just my opinion. I don't like to personally spit fire in either direction. I think that my journey is my own, and the choices and the way that I do things is really only relevant to myself, but I do appreciate the people that take things from my life views and from my work ethic and apply them to their own in a positive way and benefit from it. So that's where I'm coming from. Sorry this video ran a little bit long, but I did have a lot that I wanted to talk about. As far as all the parties involved, if anybody is thinking that I'm taking sides, please understand that I'm just looking at the logic and the way that it's going back and forth and seeing the situations as objectively as I possibly can, and I'm just trying to offer my advice and guidance on how to deal with the personal issue of taking criticism, processing it, dealing with it, and hoping that you can improve yourself as a result on either end. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and got something, and if you're still listening, I appreciate you even more. The t-shirt pre-sale is still going on down below. I'll link that in the description. It goes on till the 25th. For everybody who's asked me if I'm going to be shipping those before the pre-sale ends, no, the point of the pre-sale is to get an idea for that first big bulk purchase that Strength Through is going to make before they start sending out the shirts. So they are coming. I promise we didn't forget about you guys. I appreciate the continued support, and I'll be back in the gym tomorrow doing my deadlifts and some more bench pressing. Thanks again. Bye.